Hello, and welcome to Legalbytes. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we explain the law one bite at a time. We don't give legal advice, but we do talk about how the law works and try to look into our crystal ball to see how things might turn out. If you're enjoying this on YouTube, we'd love it if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, all the great YouTube-y stuff. And if you want to listen while out and about, we're now offering our live streams in podcast form where you can leave a rating and review. Links are in the description below, as well as to our clips channel where you can find some of the best clips taken from our live streams. Otherwise, if you want to catch me elsewhere, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so on Locals, Patreon, or by becoming a YouTube member, or by buying some really awesome Legalbytes merch. Again, all links are in the description below. And with that said, let's get into it. All right, belly flopping right on into this Tuesday. How's everybody doing? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope you're having a wonderful Tuesday. Hope that this week is treating you well. Maybe you're buying some super discount candy today. Day after Halloween is the best day to buy candy because it's all like half off immediately the next day. So I hope it's going well either way. So today, what we're going to do is we're talking about the Danny Masterson trial and the Harvey Weinstein trial. Again, we've got quite a bit to catch up on. So we'll see how this goes. We're going to start with Harvey Weinstein and go through some articles, and then we're going to do something a little bit different for the Danny Masterson case, because I know I've been talking about talking with Tony Ortega, and I apologize before I called him Danny Ortega. Total brain fart, nothing intended with that. Tony Ortega, who is a journalist who's been following Scientology matters for like decades. He's at the courthouse every single day and reporting on it. So we're going to go through some of his stuff rather than relying on some articles here, because he's got some good YouTube videos where he's kind of giving his impressions for the whole day. And then he's also going through, and then he has a Substack, which you guys can, I've got a link to it in the chat here. Let me do that right now. Tony Ortega's Substack. You guys can see he's got daily, excuse me, he's got daily reports, multiple in a day, where he is going through the trial, and he's basically doing like his own transcript. They are allowing, it looks like they're allowing computers in the courtroom for this, so long as I guess they don't actually record them. So he's typing everything on there. So we're going to go through some of his videos and probably some of his reports also, because just to show you guys what that all looks like and just how detailed he is and how much we can get from his reporting on it. That is way better than anything that we'll probably see anywhere else. So I'm going to see if we can go through last Thursday and Friday, because there was no trial in this case for Masterson on Monday, and there is none today. So if we can go through all of it from last Thursday, Friday, since, you know, we talked about this case on Thursday, but there was still trial on that day. So there's stuff to cover from that day. We'll see if we can get through it all. Hopefully it's not too long, because there's a lot. I've got a lot of tabs open right now for sharing screens between Harvey Weinstein and Danny Masterson. There's just a lot. So, all right. So anyway, let me say hi to some folks in the chat here. Let's see here. We've got Pamela C. says, hi, Alita. Hey, how's it going? Now, Night Eye says, afternoon all. Let's see here. Robbie Dobby says, good morning, everyone. I'm heading out for an appointment, but wanted to say hi. We'll be on the replay crew. Well, awesome. I hope that you see this when you're on replay, unless you're still here for like a minute. Ginger Haynes says, good morning, Alita. Hezo1 is saying hi. And Catherine K says, hello, everyone. Aaron H says, good morning, everyone. Ginger Haynes. Oh, nickname for Virginia. Oh, nice. That is nice. Pamela C is coming in from Arizona. Gone with the Gale says, hello from Florida. Kate Leslie, hi, all. Just popping by to say hey before my therapy appointment. Well, I hope that goes well for you. Jessica Lambert says, hi from Manchester, UK. Let's see here. Lewis B from Princeton, Texas. Sandra Ramirez says, good morning. Oh, and also Sarah Shanzer, good evening from Israel. Hope everyone had a good Halloween. I hope you did too. Carrie Ann, morning, everyone. Isabel says morning. And let's see here. Family man Donnie says, good morning, everyone. Hope you all had a fun and safe Halloween. Yes, I hope you did as well. Alrighty, Arterison still in Finland. Hi, all. And Victoria McWilliams from Texas. Spicy C. Dre Company from Oregon. We've got Chris B saying hi. We've got, let's see, Chris B. Oh, saying from morning from Virginia. Sokotoa. I'm here from SoCal. Wonderful. Oh, Kate Leslie, I needed an extra therapy session after the Brooks trial. I don't know if that's if you're making a joke of that or if that is serious, but either way, I hope it goes well. Aaron Morgan, morning everyone from the UK. And Secret McSquirrel said to remember to switch to live chat. That is helpful because then you can see the live chat. All right, well, cool. So I should have said this last time before we got into the articles, and I always try to remember to say it, but last time I completely forgot. I'm going to say it again this time before we get into these articles. Trigger warning for everyone because we are talking about DV, SA. We're talking. I'll just say it. We're talking about rape. So I'm trying to sort of massage some of the details so that it's not quite as in your face, but sometimes it's a little bit unavoidable just because of the fact that we are talking about cases like this, and we're talking about, this is a jury that has to evaluate these very specific details that come up, and these details are important for the jury to evaluate. So we are going to get into some very spicy talk today. When I say spicy, I mean I'm talking about some details about Harvey Weinstein's body that's going to be a little weird. It's going to get a little weird. I'm just letting you know ahead of time. So fair warning for everyone that is joining in that, parts of this might be difficult for you guys to watch or to read or to listen to. And I just want to make sure that that is up there, up front, as early as possible. So, fun times. Thanks so much for gifting 5 Legalbytes memberships. That is so kind of you. Very kind, very generous. And I really, really appreciate it. And to everybody that is now a part of Bite Club. So I see Aaron H., Kelly Dawson, Isabel, Jessica Lambert, Ginger Haynes. Welcome to Bite Club. I hope you have a good time here. And thanks so much to Fun Times. And of course, I hope you can join us, all of you, in Bite Club. I hope you can join us on Friday for our Friday members exclusive kind of casual chat stream. It's been fun. It's been fun just kind of hanging out in the chat with everybody in Bite Club there. So, okay, with that, let's get into Harvey Weinstein here. So, okay. Boom. Okay. All right. So here we've got an article from Fox 11 Los Angeles talking about this is from October 31st. No, I wanted to get from earlier than that. Yeah, we want to go in date order here. Okay. Sorry. Redoing that. Ignore what I just said. We're starting with a people.com article from October 28th. So we're working our way from reporting from last Thursday. Okay. So they say Dirty Dancing actress describes disturbing alleged SA by Harvey Weinstein in a hotel. Oh, okay. Harvey Weinstein has pleaded not guilty to multiple charges of R-ing and SA. A dancer in a Harvey Weinstein produced film detailed the alleged SA she suffered at the hands of the convicted rapist during the disgraced movie mogul's second criminal trial in Los Angeles. Weinstein has pleaded not guilty to multiple charges of R-ing and SA. He is already serving a 23-year prison sentence in New York after being convicted in 2020 of R-ing and sexual assault, or SA. I'm really not doing well at this right now. Self-censoring is not working as well. All right, we'll get through it. Weinstein is appealing the conviction. According to the Associated Press, the alleged victim, identified in court and in published reports only as Ashley M., took the stand Thursday and said she was first approached by Weinstein on the set of Dirty Dancing, Havana Nights in Puerto Rico in 2003. Oh, you guys can't see the article. I'm so sorry. It's because I'm sharing the wrong one. So sorry. Why do I do this? I'm a professional, I promise. Okay. Sorry. So here we are. This was the paragraph that I just read right here. According to the Associated Press, the alleged victims identified in court and in published reports only as Ashley M. And I'm also going to zoom in on this too, just to make sure that this is visible. Okay. Took the stand on Thursday and said she was first approached by Weinstein on the set of Dirty Dancing Havana Nights in Puerto Rico in 2003. She told the court that at the time, she was a 22-year-old professional dancer serving as a dance double in the movie when Weinstein allegedly visited the set, took her aside, and proposed she give him a naked massage, the AP reports. Good Lord. She said she was disturbed by the proposal and went to the film's choreographer and producer for advice. Did either of them give you any sort of help? Deputy District Attorney Marlene Martinez asked her, according to the outlet. No, she replied. How did you feel then? Martinez questioned. That's a lot of food. Sorry, Mr. Bites just walked in with Indy and with a giant bowl of food for her. And he had this like big excited look on his face, like, oh, look at all this. She's going to love this. It was really funny. Sorry. Little bit of an interruption. Okay. So back to this much more serious topic. Okay. So how did you feel then? Martinez questioned. Freaked out, she answered. Yeah, I can understand why. I mean, if you feel, I would understand that she probably would have felt very trapped in that moment. Ashley M. said she later agreed to meet Weinstein in his hotel room to discuss potential future projects. She alleged Weinstein's assistant, Bonnie Hung, reassured her she would be with them the entire time, CBS News reports. That's weird, too. Once inside the room, the woman told the court that Hung allegedly shut the door behind us. I was like, oh no, what do I do? Oh God, everything about this is awful. According to USA Today, Ashley M. alleged Weinstein then forced her onto the bed, took her top off, and then straddled her while he did something to himself, despite her objections and pleas for him to stop. According to the AP, the woman is the second person in the trial to testify against Weinstein, but also one of 4 alleged victims who is not directly involved in the charges brought against him. The trial continues Friday, during which the defense will be allowed to cross-examine her, the outlet reports. If convicted, prosecutors say Weinstein faces up to 135 years in prison. Oh my. Okay. So that's what came out on direct. So let's see what happened on Friday on cross-examination. How effective are Weinstein's attorneys at trying to sort of recharacterize her testimony? Okay, so this is from the New York Post from the next day, talking about Friday. And this one is called Photos of Harvey Weinstein's Deformed Genitalia Shown to Jury in LA Sex Crimes Trial. So this is what I was talking about. This is where it gets weird. All right, so prepare yourselves. It's going to describe some things that are a little weird, as you can tell by the title. The jury on Harvey Weinstein's Los Angeles sex crimes trial was shown photos of the disgraced Hollywood movie mogul's genitalia on Friday. Blah. The images were included in an envelope of other photos and reports presented to the 12-member jury in a private room at Los Angeles Superior Court. Okay, so I'm glad that they didn't just like blast these up for like the entire courtroom to see, right? Like for like all of the reporters and everybody else, because technically it's open to the public, right? Like folks from the public can come in if they can fit in the room. The images, okay, so sorry, I've already read that part. The array of documents was submitted as an exhibit in Weinstein's trial over 11 counts of rape and SA involving 5 women between 2003 and 2014. The convicted pervert's private parts are at the center of Weinstein's latest trial. The disgraced film producer sustained scarring and alterations in his you-know-what from a 1999 surgery to remove Fournier's gangrene, prosecutors said. Doctors removed some of Weinstein's scrotum and placed them into his thighs. That's weird. That surgery caused pretty noticeable scarring, and you'll see the pictures, Deputy District Attorney Paul Thompson said on Monday. His lawyer grilled a victim Wednesday for supposedly lying about Weinstein's, uh, I'll just say it, Weinstein's testicles, and forced her to go into detail on their appearance. The unnamed victim, who alleges she was assaulted in 2013, told jurors Weinstein had problems with testicles and that they were part of him. The images were presented just one day after Dirty Dancing 2 actress testified that Weinstein did things on her face in 2003 while his assistant waited outside a hotel room and demanding she give him a naked massage. The then 22-year-old said Weinstein shoved her onto the bed but never saw Weinstein's you know what. Okay. So, and this is part of so this is something that the prosecution is able to do in California, right? So the last article that we just kind of went through, was, talking about a witness who is not one of the victims related to one of the charges here, right? But this is somebody from a prior incident. And in California, you're able to bring in all of those things, right? So all of those prior incidents. And, in a lot of states, that's not necessarily available to the prosecution from what I've researched anyway. This is something that is relatively unique to California, that you can bring in all of these other allegations from before and use those to sort of help sort of set up this like MO essentially. You know, normally that's not allowed because it starts to sound like character evidence, right? Because if he did something with, some random person 10, 20 years ago, that doesn't necessarily mean that this event happened now. Here, there's a lot of believability for a lot of people because it's Harvey Weinstein and because we know that this is, that he has been convicted in New York. And there are just so many stories of so many women that come across as very sincere and very real and very truthful about Harvey Weinstein, that he is like the epitome of a Me Too villain, right? So it's hard to like look at any of these women that come forward in this kind of a case and to say no, I don't believe you, right? Because there's just so much that has come out about Harvey Weinstein in these various cases. So that's kind of one of the challenges here too, is to review this kind of case and review the testimony and to really try to look at things as objectively as possible. So let's get into the next article. So unfortunately, it didn't get into the cross-examination, which is unfortunate because I really want to see how the defense attorneys are trying to reframe and recharacterize. This is the other part of these trials, right? Is sorry, let me move over a little. This is the other part of these trials here is that you only get half the story in the direct testimony. The other half of the story is going to come out in the cross-examination, right? Potentially the other half of the story. That's at least coming from a defense perspective. The jury has to be able to listen to what the defense is going to say, how they're going to try to poke holes in the witness's testimony from direct, because if there are any vulnerabilities, it's important to find that so that the jury can properly evaluate everything. So if the reporting is just on the direct testimony and none of it is on the defense cross-examination of these witnesses, that's not exactly not exactly a fair picture that is being presented for the public. I will be one of the first people to say, I've said this before, I have a bias against Harvey Weinstein here. I think he probably is guilty, but I still want to see what the cross-examination is coming from his attorneys to see what is the best kind of defense that they can put for somebody like this guy. I want to see that. Maybe it's just because this is me talking as a lawyer and I want to nerd out about it, but also I want to make sure that justice is actually being done and somebody's being convicted properly. So, okay, with that said, let's get into the next article here. The one that I accidentally pulled up first. So this one was published yesterday. And so now, yeah, so this was published yesterday. This was on, sorry, I'm brain farting right now. So this was on about Friday. Okay, let's get into it. Fox 11 news reporting. Harvey Weinstein trial. Woman says sexual assaults occurred 17 years apart. Los Angeles. A woman testified Monday that Harvey Weinstein SA'd her in a hotel room during the Toronto Film Festival in 1991, then did it again when she was sent to confront him in the same hotel during the same festival 17 years later. On the witness stand at Weinstein's Los Angeles trial, she said she was a 24-year-old aspiring actor at the 1991 festival and didn't know who Weinstein was before she met him at a party. She said her friends were abuzz about the man whose company Miramax had surged to the forefront of independent film and was making its mark at the Oscars. She said she was charmed by Weinstein at first as they discussed books and films. We got along very well, she said. He was very intelligent. We had a wonderful conversation. She said the two of them left the party for a glass of wine at a nearby cafe. Then she went with him to his room at the Four Seasons Hotel because he said he had a script for a film with a role that would be perfect for him. Yee, stranger danger. Once there, she said he went into the bathroom and emerged wearing only an open shirt and holding a hot washcloth. It all happened very, very, very quickly, she said. I was in shock. It was so unexpected. She said he pulled her skirt off, put the washcloth on her, and told her, "My wife loves this." Ugh. Ugh. Awful. She testified that she felt nauseous, scared, terrified, and repeatedly told him no and asked, "What are you doing?" She said he held her down and SA'd her with his mouth and his hand. He then climbed on top of her and started to R her, but she was able to slip away and leave the room. Already serving a 23-year sentence in New York, Weinstein, 70, has pleaded not guilty to 11 counts of R-ing and SA involving 5 women in Los Angeles and has denied engaging in any non-consensual sex. And Ann Carper in the chat is a Weinstein trial being televised? It's not. That's why we're relying on reporting for this. If it were being televised, I would have wanted to stream this myself because this is a very interesting case and one that I think a lot of people are interested in knowing about. He is not charged with the alleged assaults described in Monday's testimony. The woman, along with 3 others, is being allowed to testify so prosecutors can attempt to show Weinstein's propensity for the crimes he's charged with. The woman testified that she did not see Weinstein again until 2008 when she was 41 and temporarily living at the Four Seasons with her husband and children. Oh, God. She ran into Weinstein in the lobby during that year's festival. My blood kind of stopped, she said. I was very angry. When Weinstein's assistant came to her room to say he wanted to meet with her, she agreed. Why? And that's not to when I react like that, it's not to victim blame. It's not to say that, she made poor decisions and that therefore, like, this is why this happened. But this is me looking at the situation in hindsight, right? I wanted to confront him, she said. I felt like I was ready to give it to him. Oh, okay. Once in his room, she remembered asking, "How does it feel to be in front of the woman who said no to you?" Weinstein then dismissed his assistant from the room and quickly guided her toward a door. She said before she realized it was, she said before she realized it, she was in a closed bathroom with Weinstein where he was blocking her way out. Ugh. She said Weinstein grabbed her front and did something in front of her before letting her leave the room. The woman said she didn't tell anyone about the second assault for years because of the sheer embarrassment of having it happen again. God, this is awful. I was in shock, she said, so embarrassed, just so embarrassed. She remained composed and unrattled through her testimony, but began crying when asked what effect the 2 assaults had on her, replying, "There are so many layers to that. The first," she said, "drove her from acting. I never wanted to go through anything like that again," she said. The second had major personal effects. It hurt my marriage because I didn't tell him, she said. It's been really hard. Her testimony appears to be the first time she has told her story in a public setting. Like similar witnesses in this and other trials, she at first told her story quickly and in plain language, but was asked to double back and provide more graphic and more difficult details. Weinstein's attorneys are set to cross-examine her on Tuesday afternoon. So her testimony is going to be continuing today, and we'll see what happens with that. Hopefully we'll get some kind of reporting on cross-examination of this witness. But so far, I mean, it seems like the testimony coming out of this trial is, of course, horrific, as we would have expected. Very similar to what we heard coming out of the New York trial. And yeah, it's bad. This is just, there's a lot of just gruesome stuff. And like I said, it's hard for me to not believe them based on what has come out previously. At the same time, I also want to keep my brain 10% open, right? Because there is a possibility that some of these could be fabrications, right? Even if there were many, many women that he did these things to, there's always a possibility that women that come forward, that there could be one or two that didn't experience something, you know? And that's a not a fun thing to think about, but technically it is a possibility. So, and of course, we're not in the courtroom to be able to really evaluate these various witnesses. So, yeah. So with that, it's like I said, we are relying quite a bit on the reporting here. And then there's one more article, which I'm not going to read through, but I'll just let you guys know that it looks like there are estimations for this case that they are looking that they are probably going to be through the bulk of the case by Thanksgiving week. So this is according to his defense attorney. So we'll see how this continues to progress. We are still in the prosecution's case in chief. All of these witnesses have been put on by the prosecution. So we'll see how this progresses, but okay. Now let's move on to, okay. But now let's move on to the Danny Masterson case, because that one has, it actually has fewer days to go through, because like I said at the beginning of this live stream, there was no court yesterday. There's no court today. So they've got a longer weekend, it sounds like, out of this courthouse. And so we've just got an update from Thursday and from Friday, but we've got more details that we can go through because we do have Tony Ortega's accounts. We've got a couple of videos where he summarized some stuff. So I'm going to pull up a couple of his YouTube videos, one from Thursday, one from Friday, and I will sort of react to some of the things that he says, because he's got some very interesting insights from being in the courtroom. And then we're going to go through at least one or two of his what was I going to say, of his reports that he's been putting up on Substack, where it's like he's literally like transcribing the things that are happening in the courtroom. I think that you guys will be really interested in this. So, okay, let's do this. All right. So this is from day 11 of the trial, which was last Thursday. Okay. Let's get started, shall we?
Underground Bunker.
And that's the name of his Substack, is Underground Bunker. So because he refers to how he's basically in hiding, and that's how he addresses people as hey folks in the Underground Bunker. Okay, just in case you weren't familiar.
End of a long day here on Thursday outside of the courthouse. A lot happened today. I have a lot to go through. I'm going to try to get through it quickly. First, we started out continuing the cross-examination of Jane Doe 3. And there was a key moment that I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but there's some issue about how Danny hit Jane Doe 3 in the November 2001 incident. She said she pulled his hair. He reacted by smacking her in the face. And the defense is saying that she told Detective Reyes that it was a slap, but that now later it's become a fist. And the way she actually showed it was the base of the hand hitting rather than like a knuckle hit. Okay. But again, Cohen goes on, but didn't you tell?
And Cohen is Masterson's attorney in this. So in case you guys are less familiar.
Detective Reyes was a slap. Didn't you say to Detective Reyes it was a slap? And so, when she said, I don't remember, I don't know, he said, will it refresh your memory to show you the transcript? Okay.
So before he gets into actually showing the transcript, what he's getting into here is, of course, the issue of consistencies and inconsistencies for these various witnesses. And I've talked about this quite a bit before, right? The issue of time passage is one of the possible issues here, right? These incidents allegedly occurred back in like 2001 to 2003, which is forever ago. We're talking like what, 2 decades ago now at this point. So there's a lot that can happen with somebody's mind and with somebody's memory in that amount of time. And so what the jury has to look at is how the story was told by these various alleged victims over time, starting with the earliest possible time. Another layer to this is the defense argument that these various alleged victims are not speaking truthfully, but rather are concocting sort of they've sort of concocted a scheme together to come together and collude to sort of bring Masterson down, send him to jail, basically because they have a personal grudge against him. Essentially, that's like basically the main defense here by the Masterson side. So, I mean, it sounds very familiar if you've been following the Manson cases as well, because that's what Marilyn Manson alleges for in defense of some of these other cases, and then also as a plaintiff in the case against Evan Rachel Wood and Ilma Gore. So there's that layer too. So what they have to do is they've got to look at these various accounts that these witnesses have made, both over time, right? So starting as early as they possibly could, when did they first tell someone about something? A is one part. 2 is how did they describe it? Number 3 is, did they tell other people over time as well? And did the story change at all over time? That on its own is one layer. Number 2, because of the defense, their argument about this collusion thing, on top of that, they also have to show, was there any change in the story since they met the other alleged victims and they started to talk to one another, right? Because as soon as you start talking to other witnesses or potential witnesses, then there's a possibility that their testimony can change to sort of conform with one another to sort of strengthen their case. So here, what the defense obviously really, really wants to show is that her testimony, this is Jane Doe 3, that her testimony has changed over time from when she initially reported to the police versus when she then, eventually filed a lawsuit or versus what she's saying today in court. Anytime there's an inconsistency, that's a potential chink in the armor of the prosecution. But I will say that not every inconsistency is going to be one that is going to be totally detrimental, right? The jury is going to evaluate those inconsistencies to say, okay, is this a really important thing, or is this a distinction without a difference, right? Like is this idea of her describing a slap versus a punch, if whether it looks like, a closed fist with knuckles to the face, or, even closed fist with a basically butting your effectively your wrist against a face, how these details play out. Does the jury care, or does the jury feel that she is being sincere on the stand and that she's mostly telling the truth and maybe she's forgotten a couple details here and there? Or would they be very critical of something like that? Is that something that they would care about? That is up to the jury, right? This is one of those questions that like none of us can really necessarily predict, unless we have a sense of how they come across to us as well. So he's going to get into the report that Detective Reyes took down. Now, when we're talking about Detective Reyes, this is something that Tony Ortega has talked about quite a bit, is that the defense is really apparently using Detective Reyes as an example of a police officer that did not do her job properly. So they want to be very critical of her reporting. They want to be very critical of the way that she conducted an investigation. And so they would like to cast aspersions about, the differences between the reporting here, the reporting there, because anything that starts to make things muddy is going to be better for the defense. So anyway, to back up and to kind of talk, back about what Tony Ortega just said here, is that there's a potential difference between the way that Jane Doe 3 described getting hit by Danny Masterson in the moment, right? When she pulled his hair and then he hit her across the face. Was that an open slap? Was that a punch? Was that, butting his hand against her face like that, like, using the basically the lower palm, the lower part of her palm, or, or was it something completely different? So what Cohen, the defense attorney, does here is he goes to the transcript from Jane Doe 3's conversation with Detective Reyes and to see how did she describe it. So let's go back to this video now that I've kind of given a little bit of an explanation here.
So he shows her the transcript, and you may have noticed this in my notes. What does it say? That she's trying to describe it, and Reyes says, so it was, she said that he didn't punch her. So Reyes said, oh, so it was a slap. And she said, yeah. This is the second time now when it turns out that the defense keeps saying that these women have said something, they've said something. It turns out it was Reyes who said it. And of course, we weren't in the room, so we don't know if it was kind of like, oh, so he slapped you? And she said, yeah. I mean, this is so dishonest to put this on the women that they said it was a slap, and it was Reyes. And I'll remind you the previous time, in the preliminary hearing, in the November 2001 description, Mesereau had asked Jane Doe 3, well, didn't you tell Detective Reyes that he wasn't inside you, he was just trying to have sex with you? And this is huge, because that's the charging incident. And if he wasn't actually inside of her, there's no rape. So this, I can tell you in the preliminary hearing, this seemed like a huge moment. Did she tell Reyes that he was just trying to have sex? They pulled out the transcript, and what do you know? Who said trying to have sex? Reyes did, not Jane Doe 3. This is so dishonest the way the defense does this. They keep using what the detective said to pretend that it was the women that said it.
So I will say, though, that I don't completely agree with what Tony is saying here. I do still think that it is problematic for the prosecution to have this as an inconsistency. And here's why. Because when we're talking about a conversation between two people, one person says, so, they suggest something, right? So they'll suggest, it wasn't a punch, just using this example. So, Ray is saying it wasn't a punch, was it? The other side has an opportunity to correct that if that's not accurate. And so if the other person in that conversation doesn't say, well, I don't know if a punch is correct, but here's how, here's how it played out. I can describe for you like what part of his hand he used. There's a way to not fully agree with that, but to say like I maybe agree, but not really. You know what I mean? Like there's a way to respond to that. But if she just says yes, then she's agreeing to that statement. So that is still an inconsistency in that case. So I even though this was Detective Reyes putting that suggestion forward, we can't just assume that because the officer is the one that put that suggestion forward that it's only that person that's talking, because if the other side has an opportunity to say something otherwise to correct what Detective Reyes was asking or was saying or was suggesting, you have to you have to evaluate that. So like I said, I do have a little bit of a disagreement with him about that. He seems much more incredulous by thinking that the defense is really trying to hammer on this and that it's a big nothing burger. But I do think that that is a point for the defense, in my opinion here. Okay, let's continue on.
Sorry, I'm getting a little worked up, but
it's okay, Tony.
That's just I hope the judge noticed that. All right. As for the cross-examination in general, once again, Cohen, it always seems with Cohen that he's setting something up for later, and it's all wind up and no delivery. And actually, Jane Doe 3 once again got an opportunity to bring Scientology into it in a really dramatic way, because he was asking her, why weren't you being more forthcoming to Detective Reyes? And she said, because she was terrified, and he made the mistake of asking her why. And she said, because of Scientology. So again, the defense wants to give the jury the impression that they held things back because they're changing their story. But it then comes back to, no, they're terrified about what Scientology will do with them. I thought that was a key moment during cross. Then Judge Olmedo at some...
So, and I will say that is an effective point. So the prosecution is going to want to bring that up as a reason for them not to come forward as much as possible, as often as possible. So the fact that was her reason for not coming forward is consistent with that, right? To say it's not because, this is not real. It's not because she wanted to change her story. It's not because of any of those things. It's because this really happened to her, and she was afraid of what the Church of Scientology would do to her if she did go to the police, if she did come forward to the police. So, the more that is consistent across the board with all of these victims, that is something that is going to be very helpful to the prosecution, because, especially if they are able to bring in these kind of details about the Church of Scientology's history of doing certain things that harass and intimidate suppressive persons, so to speak, right? The people that Scientology labels as suppressive persons, the folks that leave and then are very critical of the church, and the ones that go and make police reports to the police and all that kind of stuff. So okay, let's move on.
Point admonished or cautioned Cohen about the fact that he was getting into their sex life in general, and she warned him about getting into prurient content.
Yikes.
And I thought that was interesting, because he was going into kind of an odd place. What was he trying to get out of her? Because she ends up just telling him that the sex that she had with him for all these years was never loving.
Oh.
I had a reaction, and I bet the jury did too. And then when Mueller had a chance on redirect, he asked her about it, and she filled in the further detail that when he wanted sex, he just went at it, whether she was prepared or not. And of course, you know what that's code for. I mean, no foreplay, no, and that's why sex was painful. He was going at it before she was even into it. So again, just a really terrible description of who this guy was. And
so yeah, if it sounds like from what he's saying that was initially brought up on cross-examination by Cohen to get into these sort of details about what their intimate relationship was like, which sounds like a bad idea if you're going to get into it in that way, because especially if that's the case, right? Like she's gonna want to say that things were not good, that things were not fun in that respect, and they should be loving, they should be, they should be intimate, they should be, this wonderful experience. But that she's gonna say, like, no, like, it was never good because he was always aggressive, and he, was never loving, and he was never caring in these kinds of moments and in this kind of context. I mean, maybe cross-examination, maybe the defense is doing that because they're going to talk to Danny Masterson. I don't know if he's going to testify yet, right? Where it's unclear. He might, but if he does have a Fifth Amendment right to not testify. So he's not required to, but there are all kinds of evaluations that have to go into whether or not he should be testifying. And that's just practical reasons very often, right? Because whether the jury is going to allow his his story to be told without hearing from him, that's a like I said, it's an evaluation that has to happen. But maybe the reason for getting into that on cross-examination is because the defense is thinking, okay, we're going to put him on the stand eventually, and he's going to be talking about what's going to, like, what that relationship was like, and that it was a completely different story in comparison to what Jane Doe 3 says here about the characterization of their relationship. I don't know. Okay, let's continue.
What he was into, and years of unloving sex. And I think that came through pretty strong. Of course, the defense the cross-examination got into her post-breakup encounters. We knew they would get into that. But Mueller had carefully set that up previously. We talked about that before. And I think because of the way Mueller had set it up, Cohen's options were kind of limited on that. And it didn't seem very effective when Cohen was asking her about it.
And that's why we've talked about this many times when we're commenting on trials, when we're commenting on on strategy of what to talk about in a direct examination. When you've got some evidence or some testimony that you think the other side is going to be pulling out that's not exactly good for your case, it's always better to pull it up in the beginning, right off the bat, and to deal with it head on, because it takes the sting out of that bad information. So doing that was a good idea, because then, like Tony said, then on cross-examination, it limits what the defense is able to do with that information, because the jury's already heard it, and they've already heard it framed in a way that was more beneficial to the prosecution. So that was probably very effectively done by Mueller, by the prosecutor.
Then he was done, and then it was before redirect could start. Judge Olmedo suddenly addressed the audience, which was startling. And it turns out she was singling out one guy sitting just a little bit in front of me. And she said that she wanted everybody in the audience to know that if you're going to sit in this audience, you are not going to make faces. You're not going to make gestures.
Oh.
You have to have a poker face.
Yeah.
And she singled out this one guy. So I thought that was interesting, because I checked quickly with the other reporters. We'd all noticed this man who was kind of dressed business casual. He wasn't dressed like a formal attorney, but he was with the Mastersons. Very clear. He was hanging out with the Mastersons. We got sirens. It's LA people. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
we're going the other way, though. We'll be all right in a second. But I knew this guy was with the Mastersons. He wasn't sitting in the family section.
Of course, it gets worse.
Really? Okay. He wasn't sitting in the family section, but he was clearly with the Mastersons.
Interesting.
So then there was the redirect and the recross. They were both fairly brief. I don't think either one was all that special. But then after that, when they had dismissed Jane Doe 3, excused her, we got another motion for a mistrial. If you're keeping score, that's 4 times in basically 7 days of testimony. This time, Cohen was not happy that Jane Doe 3 had referred to other victims. And he claimed that would give the jury the idea that there were other women besides just Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 2. Of course there are, but they're not supposed to know about that yet, if ever. And both Mueller and Olmedo said, look, if when she said that, it seemed like she was referring to Jane Doe 1 and 2, and they think the jury's going to feel that, and so she denied the mistrial.
Yeah. So I will say, but props to the defense for taking every possible opportunity to try to get a mistrial on this case, because the defense attorney does that, the more likely that they could possibly get a mistrial, which means that puts everything back on the prosecution to start everything over from the very beginning. And so then, then the idea is maybe they'll decide not to prosecute this case again, if this results in a mistrial. So they've tried multiple times, starting from, I think, like day one was the first time that they requested a mistrial. And it's been over things like, they're talking about Scientology too much, or these other references to other victims, using certain terms, or talking about various topics that are out of bounds. So this one was over her referring to other victims. The thing is, if this was a case where there was a charge over just one alleged victim, that would be much more of an issue. But the jury's already heard about Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 2 and Jane Doe 3. So, the jury knows that there are other alleged victims in this particular case, just because of the charges that have been alleged, and already the witnesses that have come up and testified. So that does seem to be a pretty, obviously, without having heard the actual statement that she made on the stand, you I can't fully evaluate that, but that does sound like that's a likely outcome, is what the judge actually said. It's probably proper.
But during that conversation, Judge Omeno stopped everything. This time she looked at the guy sitting in the audience and said, "What's your name?" Oh, and he had to say it, and he had to spell it.
Oh boy.
I got it in the notes if you want to see it.
You never want that to happen.
Scott Borthwick was the guy's name, right? And she said, "Look, we've got things going on up here. You're in court. There's no reason for you to be talking." So before, he was making gestures and faces at what Jane Doe 3 was saying. Now he's talking to his buddy. And she was really not happy. Of course, as soon as he spelled his name, all of us reporters in the back row were furiously typing, and we're like, "Did you see?" We found his website. He's a Laguna Beach attorney.
Oh no.
And we quickly found, one of my colleagues quickly found that he has been co-counsel with Philip Cohen and Sean Hawley on previous cases.
Okay.
So
both of those are Danny Masterson's attorneys in this trial right now. Sean Hawley, I've talked about this before. Sean Hawley is Masterson's attorney. She's also representing Trevor Bauer in his case. She's also, which is not a criminal case, but he's the plaintiff in that. And then she's also representing Evan Rachel Wood as a defendant against Marilyn Manson. So very, very interesting attorney to be following her cases. Somehow I just ended up like following her stuff. Yeah, but this is something that you did. Some judges get very, 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 very strict, right? Like I've seen this. It sucks to get called out by a judge like that. And they'll do it. They'll do it with zero qualms, and getting your name on the record. That means that then there's, potentially a report that can be made. Who knows if it sounds like he's a litigator, then he may be coming in and out of the courtroom. Judges might keep track of that kind of a thing, to then basically put you on their crap list, right? You never want that to happen. So anyway, yikes.
No question who he's with there, but he didn't come back after the afternoon break, after she had singled him out twice and admonished.
Oh, and B. So yeah, no, Masterson's attorney was not sitting in the audience making faces at a victim during testimony. So what happened was, this was an attorney who has worked with Masterson's attorneys on previous cases, apparently. So, but he was in the courtroom, kind of sitting nearby the Masterson side. So it seems like he probably was there in support of Masterson, and perhaps in support of the other attorneys. I don't know. There's always a possibility he could be doing like background work for them, or assisting the case in some way. And apparently he was making faces during witness testimony. So during victim's testimony, which can be an issue, because then if the jury sees somebody making faces, reacting to testimony, that can potentially influence the jury, or they might look at this and say, this guy's just being a jack off. Who is this guy? It could also become a distraction so that they're no longer paying attention to the testimony and instead paying attention to someone in the courtroom. There are all kinds of reasons why that can be an issue. And some judges are more strict than others. But given that this is a high profile case, it doesn't surprise me that that judge decided to just call out that guy and get his name and just embarrass him in the courtroom like that.
Him for what attorney does that? He knows how he's supposed to behave in court. Very strange. Two more things I want to tell you about that happened in the afternoon session. First, we had our first LAPD witness. This was Officer Alexander Schlegel, who's now supervisor of detectives in West LA, quite a position of authority, responsibility. He was the desk sergeant in 2004 who was at the Hollywood Wilcox station when Jane Doe 1 came in defying Scientology to make her report about Danny Masterson. Now, if you've been following the notes, you know that for days, defense attorney Philip Cohen was trying to make it sound like this report in 2004 is nothing like what Jane Doe 1 is saying today. I mean, he made it sound like there's so many discrepancies and I wondered myself, how bad is this report? Well, now that the officer's actually on the witness stand and Deputy DA Mueller could go through his report with him, step by step by step, it was the same story she told on the stand.
Yikes. That is bad for the defense. That is really bad for the defense because, when we're talking about opening statements, an opening statement in the trial is, you want to impress upon the jury that your framework is the proper framework, right? You want to say that, the story that the other side is telling you is just that. It's a story. It's not real. The reality is in these four corners, which is on our side. So listen to us. So the defense with that wants to say there are all these inconsistencies between these different accounts, between, this officer's report and then what she says later. And so the problem with that is that if you overpromise, then the jury comes back and says, oh, you were not being entirely honest. Like you are not the one that was providing the framework that is the reality. You are the one that is providing the story. And we can see through that because then the evidence just simply doesn't back it up. So overpromising is a problem in an opening statement. Overpromising, underperforming, that's not good for the defense. So if it is in fact the case here that the defense, made such a big deal about none of these consistencies are real, but then if the only inconsistencies are maybe tiny ticky-tacky sort of things, the jury is gonna feel like they've been kind of like what Tony is saying here, that it makes it sound like, oh my gosh, there are so many problems, and then they point out the problems. They're like, those are the problems. Those right there. Those are these big problems that you've been talking about. Okay, that's nothing. That's nothing. And then it ends up supporting the prosecution side. So let's continue.
It was striking. Everything was in there about the not drinking before she got to his house, the drink she had when she was with Luke Watson, going out to the backyard, getting thrown into the jacuzzi, feeling dizzy and sick, him sticking his fingers down her throat, taking her in the shower, taking her in a bed, how she woke up to him raping her. I mean, it was remarkable how just the same it was that she told him in 2004 and what she said on the stand. Just stunning. And it was only stunning because Cohen had spent days trying so hard to make it sound like there was nothing in common with what she was saying.
Yikes. And so and that's exactly it. That's the problem with, and sorry Tony. Okay. that was a bad pause. But that's exactly it, right? Because if you build this up that there are these massive inconsistencies, and then the inconsistencies are not big, then it looks like you've got nothing. You've got no case. You've got, like the jury's going to look at you like, what are you talking about?
I came out of there just really stunned. But that's when I need to tell you about the other thing that happened late this afternoon. So I got wrapped up. I'd sent you all my notes, left the courtroom, and there's two people sitting there on a bench smiling at me. Jeffrey Augustine and Mark Headley. You might have saw my picture earlier today. Mark decided to come down. He's in town. I invited him into the court. I think
these are two.
He came on up. He spent the whole afternoon in court. They're
This
grinning at me. I'm thinking, what's going on? Well, it turns out they had a very interesting encounter. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to let Mark tell you about it.
Hey, Bunker guys. Yeah, so anyway, when Danny came out of the courtroom, he was talking with a bunch of people, and I think he was with, who was he with? He was with his attorney, and then he started walking towards Jeff and I, and we're just sitting along the hallway, and he was glaring at me like the evilest glare I've ever had. And he just kept walking, but he locked eyes with me, and he kept walking, but his head turned as he walked, and he just stared right at me. And I was like, whoa, dude, take it easy, right? Like it was very aggressive without saying anything. And then he just continued down the hallway, and then Jeff sitting next to me going, that dude's been poker face every day, but he was not today.
Yeah, it's a big difference. And the thing is, I want Mark to explain why Danny Masterson would probably recognize him. This is a great story.
So when I was at Gold, we shot a movie with Danny, and it's called TR6, the use of dolls in auditing, or something like training and auditing.
So it sounds like
anyway,
a Scientology
Danny
video
is the chief.
That they made.
He's one of the chief dolls, and his name was Captain Jack. And Captain Jack was getting investigated for being a suppressive person. And I actually come in as a Sea Org investigator, and I security check everybody in the joint, and I find out it wasn't Danny who did what he was supposed to be doing. They were accusing of being him of being an alcoholic doll and other nefarious activities. And I basically got Danny off the hook and saved the day by sec checking this suppressive person supervisor. So in the movie, I'm actually the one who saved Danny from getting convicted.
So there are some terms, I'll admit there are some terms here that I'm not familiar with. Like he's talking about dolls. I don't know if that's an acronym for something, or, I mean, that has to have some kind of a specific meaning. And then I think he said sec check, like maybe security check. I'm not sure, but this sounds like specific Scientology terminology that probably people that are very close followers of the underground bunker probably are familiar with this kind of stuff. That's what it seems like.
So for me to be in the hallway when he's getting this other trial going on, it's kind of ironic that I would be there as the one who saved him so many years ago. This is back in the 90s when I saved him fictitiously. So yeah, I don't think he was very happy to see me there.
Well, I think maybe you re-stimulated him.
That's possible. It could have been an earlier similar incident.
You got him stuck in an electronic incident. His body thetans were bouncing off the wall.
He was not happy. Even Jeff was kind of like, whoa, I thought he was just being an asshole. But
wait, so Mandy Me says, no, they were actually acting as dolls that come to life when everyone leaves. So like Toy Story? Okay. I don't know if you're being sincere or not, but okay. All right. Let's see. Oh no, come on. Okay, so Mandy Me says yes. Interesting.
Jeff was like, no, he hasn't been doing that. That's not a normal thing.
He's been totally poker faced the whole 2.5 weeks. So apparently he was triggered a little bit.
Maybe I should come tomorrow.
Maybe you should come.
And then also dolls are apparently what? So this is Insightful Rhino. It says dolls are apparently also what Scientology calls the bodies they inhabit. Okay. But then also, yeah. Okay. So interesting. And then Jan E. Wallace says, sec check is a security check that is done on a regular basis in Scientology. Okay. Interesting. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
All right.
See you, bunker people.
All right. Well, that's our report from today. Very interesting day. Can't wait to see more about Officer Schlegel tomorrow. So, again, I'll remind you, if you're seeing this video on YouTube, you are a day behind the rest of us. Please sign up for the free emails at tonyortega.substack.com, and you will get my reports from the courtroom, my detailed notes, the second I send them out, like 4 times a day. It's crazy. TonyOrtega.substack.com. Sign up for the free emails. You'll be on the same day with the rest of us. Okay, from the Clara Shortridge Foltz Criminal Justice Center in Los Angeles, your proprietor signing out.
All right. Cool. So, okay, so let's get into some of his Substack stuff, because he's got some really interesting okay, let me show you. This is what it looks like on his generic Substack page. The underground bunker, and you can see he's got a lot of stuff about Scientology, Danny Masterson, a lot of stuff. So it's he's got a lot of material there. So if you're interested in seeing more of that kind of stuff, for sure, check it out. It's, yeah, like he said, it's tonyortega.substack.com. I put the link in the chat. I forgot to pin it, so I'm going to do that again. There it is in the chat. And I'm going to replace the pinned message. Okay. So be sure to check that out, because that's really, really interesting. So let's go through. We'll do at least a little bit of this here, because I don't know if we should do all of it, because like I said, he's very, very detail oriented. Okay. Jane Doe 3 continues to crawl. Okay. So he's very detail oriented, and it's like literally reading like a transcript here. So this is from day 11, which is that same day as the video that we just watched. Morning break report. So every time they have a break, he's uploading this stuff and sending it out. So you can see this basically like as things are happening. So it says here, this report was produced live during a court hearing with a lot going on. There will be typos. Please don't email us about typos that you found or that you find. Okay, so he says, morning session. Danny's wearing a gray suit today. Defense attorney Philip Cohen is wearing a blue 3-piece suit. Natty as usual. Karen Goldstein is in a gray suit. Bijou is, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I've only ever seen his wife's first name written. But anyway, so yeah, I hope that I'm pronouncing it correctly. Bijou is chatting with Chris Wadhams in the family section. Judge Olmedo arrives. We're on the record. Jury's still out. Cohen asks for a sidebar. Only 7 reporters now and 3 in the public gallery. Only 3 in the Masterson section. Feels very empty today, but it's early, 8:45 a.m. Very long sidebar. Carol and Alana arrive to join the family section. Sidebar finally breaks up after 12 minutes. After waiting some while, Judge Olmedo calls for another sidebar and tells us that we're waiting for a juror. And you know what? Let me zoom in here again. Okay. That we're waiting for a juror. Slow getting started this morning. In the meantime, we will relate that we heard from a colleague that the Brian Statler family lawsuit has settled. Okay, that's a different matter, it sounds like. Trial was scheduled to begin on December 6th, and the defendants were the 2 Inglewood police officers who shot Statler in the Inglewood Scientology Ideal Org in 2019. Statler's parents originally filed the lawsuit. Okay, I'm going to skip through this because it doesn't have to do with Masterson. Okay, Jane Doe 3 has taken the witness stand. Jurors coming in. Judge Olmedo gets things going. Cross-examination of Jane Doe 3 continues. Defense attorney Philip Cohen asks if his position is okay. She says yes. Remember, she was uncomfortable with his pacing over by the Masterson family and Danny. That's right. She had made a request for him to stop walking over by him because she didn't want to have Danny Masterson in her line of sight. Cohen asking about the relationship, like most were their arguments, mostly one-sided. I suppose you mean that Masterson was saying things to you and you would answer. Correct. The dynamic was that Masterson would say things abusive or insulting and you would not respond. I struggled with standing up for myself. You mentioned an incident that had resulted in hair dragging. Can you tell me when that took place? I just remember it in that apartment and when I got back from Paris. Can you give me an approximate year? 1997. Whew, we are going far back. You had indicated that you said something to him just prior to what you describe as hair dragging. Is that right? No. I thought you had said something, and as a result, he did that. No, after. What do you remember what you said to him? Or do you remember what you said to him? Kind of. Can you tell me? I told him that I slept with someone else, which was not true. Interesting. Let's start with what you told him. You were scared to stand up to him? Yes. So what did you ask him? You said you slept with someone else? Asked and answered. So there's an objection for asked and answered. Who? Irrelevant. You said that Masterson would pee on you. Oh, gosh. Yes, sir. In the shower? Yes, sir. Had you ever mentioned that to Mueller before? I don't know. Did you ever tell Reyes that? I didn't speak to her much. You gave her an interview, didn't you? Correct. And to Vargas? Yes, sir. And you talked to Mueller. It's been 6 years. So my question is, with Reyes, did you ever tell her that he peed on you? I don't remember. Detective Vargas? I don't remember. Cohen enters a document saying he's going to lay foundation about time of interviews. Looks like a list of about 7 dates. Cohen, you talked about that you spoke with your husband in 2011, possibly 2010 or 2011. So around that time, you spoke with your husband about the allegations in this case. Yes, sir. And then in December 2016, you contacted a rape hotline. I believe that was the end of October 2016. So you contacted the rape hotline December 9th, 2016. You did. Oh, okay. So sorry. December 9th, 2016, you did an interview with Austin PD. I thought it was the 6th, could have been the 9th. That Austin PD interview was in person? Yes, sir. The same day you spoke with another individual there, a Miss McCullough? No, sir. Do you remember asking to a couple of people at Austin PD, a desk person and a detective? And then in January 2017, you speak to Detective Reyes. Yes, sir, but we spoke in December. But in January 2017, she flew to Austin to speak with you in person. That's true. Then in June 2017, you spoke with Mr. Mueller? Yes. And after you had spoken to Detective Reyes? Yes. You spoke with Mueller by Zoom? I didn't have Zoom. Might have been FaceTime. By some electronic means. Yes, sir. This is actually a pretty decent cross-examination. It's the questions are sharp. They're finely tuned. They are what do I say? They're very narrowly focused, and it's getting her to say yes sir, no sir, yes sir, no sir, not really allowing her much space to elaborate on most of these things, other than when it doesn't matter. And you've given Detective Vargas a number of statements. Yes, sir. So when you spoke with these various individuals and organizations at various times, you wanted to give them as complete of information of what you were alleging. I'd never been interviewed by a detective before, and I was terrified. I just remember answering their questions honestly. Does that include as completely as you could be? Probably not. Did you keep information regarding, for instance, the November 2001 charge from Detective Reyes? It's not that I kept anything, it's just I was answering her questions. It's your position that you did not intentionally keep any information from Reyes. That's correct. Or from Mr. Mueller. That's correct. I can't tell the prosecutor things. I have to tell detectives first. And that makes sense, honestly. If she says, it's not that I kept anything, it's just that I was answering her questions. Like most people that have an interview with an officer like that, they don't necessarily have a lot of experience in these kinds of matters. So they might be thinking like, you're going to ask me a question and I'm going to answer. Whatever information you want to get from me is what you're going to be asking me. So like they might not necessarily think to say like, I'm going to volunteer more information that you're not asking me. And that's how these kinds of investigations can really get sort of shaped by the officer, or by the detective that is coming in and gathering information. So the way that they frame their questions, the way that they go about asking their questions can really influence what comes in and what doesn't come into the report, not by any fault of any individual necessarily, but just because they're thinking, well, I don't know what's relevant to you or what's not relevant to you. When you spoke to Mr. Mueller, you were honest with him? Yes, sir. Vargas? Yes, sir. Reyes? Yes, sir. The rape hotline? Yes, sir. Your husband? Yes, sir. Well, I kept some things for my husband. During your relationship with Mr. Masterson and the verbal abuse, there was one time in the 5+ years when you were together when he struck you? Yes, sir. And when he struck you, you had pulled his hair, correct? Yes, sir. And in response, he hit you? Yes, sir. Did he hit you? Yes, sir, he did. In the demonstration, when Mr. Mueller asked you to show it, you had your fist closed or half closed and to the left of your cheek. She demonstrates it, a closed fist, but the butt of her hand hitting her face first, not the knuckles. There's a discussion between Olmedo, Cohen, and Jane Doe 3 about how to describe for the court reporter what she's displaying. Cohen, I suspect that has stayed with you because you indicated it was the only time he hit you. That's true. So it's vivid in your mind. Yes. Did you tell Detective Reyes had slapped you? I don't think so. Would it help to refresh your recollection of a transcript of the interview with Detective Reyes? So here's the impeachment here by the defense attorney about, whether this was a punch or a slap or using the butt of her hand or what have you. So, the question is, will the impeachment be effective? According to Tony Ortega, no, it wasn't. But let's see. Cohen brings a transcript of January 2017 interview with Detective Reyes. Let us know if that refreshes your memory of what you told her. Oh, hi, Kitty. Does that help you refresh your recollection? Yes, sir. Did you tell Detective Reyes that it was a slap? No, sir. You saw the transcript? Yes, sir. Can we agree the transcript indicates that it was a slap?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Can you do voices?
You want me to do voices?
Yes.
Oh no. I want to be respectful. Possibly. Mr. Bites wants to know if I can do this in voices. And also Stuck on Strings, thanks so much for the super chat, says, you are pronouncing bijou really well. Oh, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. So, hey, Mr. Meow, you are getting in the way with your tail again. Okay. So he says, can we agree the transcript indicates that it was a slap? Olmedo says he can read it and ask her if she said it. Detective Reyes asked, his hand open or closed? JD3, which means Jane Doe 3. I don't think he punched me. I think it was Reyes. Just a slap? Jane Doe 3. Yeah. Did you make that statement to Detective Reyes? So yeah, this does look like an effective impeachment, in my opinion. Like I understand what Tony was saying, that this is, it was suggested by Reyes, but this was Jane Doe 3 saying, I don't think he punched me. Whether that's going to, impact the jury, whether they're going to find that as a difference that actually makes a difference, right? An inconsistency that they think, really does reveal a flaw in her testimony. I mean, that comes down to the jury. So, but for my part, I do think that this is an effective impeachment because she did herself say, I don't think he punched me. And then Reyes said it was just a slap. And then she says, yes. So yeah. Okay. So did you make that statement to Detective Reyes? Yes, sir. Were you telling the truth? Yes, sir. Did you tell Detective Reyes that he slapped you? I said, yeah. That slap that you mentioned to Detective Reyes, that would be the only time you say that Masterson struck you, hit you, slapped you during the relationship. That's true. In addition to Masterson never slapping you other than this incident, is it also accurate that he never threatened to hit you during the relationship? There were times I felt he was going to, but I don't know. Do you recall telling Mr. Mueller that Masterson had never threatened to hit you? I don't remember. Would it help to refresh your recollection to look at a transcript with Mr. Mueller from June 2017? Yes, sir. He brings her a document. Does that help you refresh your recollection? Not really. You had a question for me? When I said that, was the question In response to reporting, Olmedo asked for the next question. Cohen, not really is the response. You had raised the dynamics of your sex life with Mr. Masterson during direct testimony. Yes, sir. I prefer not to ask about someone's sex life, but since you raised it, I need to ask some questions. Okay. My understanding of the dynamic was that he wanted to have sex on more occasions than you wanted to have. Is that fair? Yes, sir. And as your relationship developed, the sex became kind of robotic. Is that a good word to use? No. Did you feel it became less loving? I don't believe it was ever loving. So the sex was never loving. Correct. Never romantic. That's correct. So when you said things were great that first year, not great then. At the time, I didn't have much to compare what a healthy relationship would be like. Is it your testimony that sex between you was never intimate? I would say that it was not loving. It was very rough and forceful, and he didn't understand that a woman needs to be prepared, not just jump on someone and doing it their way. So if you were going to put that under an umbrella, your position is that he was a very bad lover. Objection sustained. Yeah, that definitely is mischaracterizing the testimony. You believed he was a bad lover. Irrelevant, Almedo says. You said he wanted sex without foreplay. Objection sustained. Well, you said he wanted sex before you were ready? Correct. Olmedo asked the jury to leave the courtroom. Oh, and this is what Tony was talking about with him just kind of getting into the prurient sort of stuff. So let's get some thoughts in the chat here, because I think there's some interesting thoughts happening. Aaron H says, but her initial statement in the cross-examination was hit, not slap or punch. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I don't get this lengthy discussion about slap, hit, punch. It's violent anyway. And that's what what I'm saying here is I do agree that it might not make a difference to the jury, because the jury might just look at it and say, he's hitting her. Is anybody arguing that he's hitting her in this moment? You know, whether it's a slap or whether it's a punch, this is violence against her. So, jury might not make a difference, but if she is making these inconsistencies over time, if she more recently referred to it as a punch and then otherwise she referred to it as a slap, that could make a difference. Aaron H., I think the idea is that if she's lying about how he did it, then she could be lying that it happened at all. Exactly. Moxie McMahon says, yeah, right, because how does this sound? If it wasn't R if he didn't hit you, or it wasn't R if he didn't hit you, I get inconsistencies, but the main details of R are consistent IMO. Yeah. And the jury may be saying that as well. Okay. All right. And B, give all the cuddles to Holmes for me, please. I will. I absolutely will. He is just coming in for some cuddles. So, okay, back to the transcript here. All right. So the jury leaves the room. Olmedo, I want to know where you are going with this line of questioning. Yeah, I would want to know as well. This is definitely getting very uncomfortable, right? And then Cohen says the issue has been raised with that Mr. Masterson has committed a number of SAs given the way he had sex with JD3. That requires intent. JD3 has now laid out as to how he had sex, what his style of sex was. And so to the extent that sex between them was not loving, that he was having sex before she was ready, I think that was relevant to what she said in direct. I don't think that's helpful for his case, though. I really don't think that was helpful for his case, because it just makes him look like a bad person. And that, it actually, if anything, for me, raises the possibility that maybe there were even more instances where he took her without her consent, because if she wasn't ready when he decided to pursue this line of action, and he would regularly do that when she wasn't ready, how much of that translates to her not just being not ready, but also not consenting? So I don't think this is a good line for Cohen to be going down for the defense. I don't think that's good at all. I don't think it helps Masterson at all here. And then Mueller responds, I don't think the issue of intent is an accurate argument. And I believe that where we're going is to an area that is irrelevant and improper. And Mr. Cohen has laid a little bit, but if we go any further, it's improper. Olmedo says, the court's concern, I understand the issue of consent. Cohen says, again, the charge is November. With respect to November, in part, the issue that there was no sex. And then Olmedo responds, there have been two primary incidents discussed. JD3 has answered some questions concerning sex in the more general term. I have limited going into the 6-year relationship. So with that said, I believe she has already put on the record the nature of the general sexual interaction in her opinion. You have it there for argument, but this case is about the incident in November. In 1108 evidence, the December incident has come in, but the court is going to limit further testimony because it would go into further sexual incidents that are not relevant. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about correct. Just because, the door has been opened for some of these things, it doesn't mean that it's open for everything. And then Cohen says, I am only asking because of what came in during direct that had nothing to do with the November incident. Olmedo said, if it did, only in a very limited way. Cohen, I disagree. For the record, the hair pulling incident, she had talked about coming back from Paris and he had sex with her before she was ready. And with the Paris incident, Olmedo, you're not asking about the Paris incident. You're asking about how he was as a lover in general, the dynamics of the relationship aside from sexual interaction and about her behavior before and after. And there will be an expert talking about SA victims and how they react. But at this point, I think the questions are more prurient than relevant. Yeah. So, and this is the balancing test that the judge has to use for certain testimony, right? Because it's when you have testimony that is relevant, that's not the only analysis. So it has to be more relevant than prejudicial to the other side. So if the testimony that is being brought in is somewhat relevant, but very, very, very prejudicial because it's super sensitive and super risque like this, then it's something that the judge is going to be much more hesitant to allow in. Hi. So yeah, Holmes is all about the cuddles right now. Let me show this really quick. Hi, buddy. How's it going? You want to say hi to everybody? Or do you want to just take a nap? Okay, that's fine. You can take a nap while I read. Okay. So Cohen then responds, I'm not trying to be prurient. The statement that she gives prior to the hair pulling is that she told him she slept with his brother. Now, the reason I was trying to ask about that is that she was saying she was too afraid to say things to him. But I imagine that anyone who says something like that is not someone who is afraid to speak up. I would think that would hit harder than hearing it was someone at work or something. Okay. Olmedo says depends on how close you were to your brother. Cohen says, I suppose. Olmedo then says, I did allow the question to be asked about the basis of the argument and that she slept with someone. I allowed that in because people are going to be proffering that this was a somewhat domestic violence relationship. I allowed it in for a provocation. I understand your argument that the brother makes it more provoking, but I don't think it needs to go further. He can testify to his state of mind, but he's not testifying. So it sounds like she slept with his brother. Is that what happened? I mean, this is behind closed doors. This is not in front of the jury, but that's what it sounds like happened here, which is wild if that's the case. Cohen says, thank you. Calls for the jurors to come back in. Cross continues. Okay, so now Cohen asking questions again. When Masterson wanted to have sex and you did not want to, he would keep asking. He didn't ask. Ooh, that's not good for Masterson. That's not a good answer for Masterson at all. Because it sounds like this is somebody who is continuing to essentially effectively force these interactions where the other party did not consent. Did you tell Detective Reyes that that he would keep asking a million times? I don't think so. I don't know. Did you tell Mueller a million times? I don't know. Is that true? Would he keep asking and asking? There was no asking. He would just do it. Yes, sir. Would it be fair to characterize that you either gave in to his request, or if you didn't, he would go away angry, name call, and not talk to you for 2 days? Your question kind of confused me because I want to be completely sure. You want me to rephrase it? Sure. And that's actually that's a good witness right there. A good witness is not necessarily going to take the question that is given to them if they are confused by it, because a good witness is going to say like, hey, like, your question doesn't make sense to me. I don't like I don't understand what it is that you're asking me. And rather than just sort of trying to figure it out and then like give an answer that you think maybe answers the question. So this is a good witness. I think she's been prepared well. You spoke with Detective Reyes in January 2017, and you indicated that you were scared of speaking with her, terrified. Because it was Detective Reyes? No, sir. Just in general? Because of Scientology. Did Detective Reyes ever ask you whether he would force himself on you? I don't remember her questions. Do you remember the answer? He would just do it and I would just let him. Well, that's true. Do you recall her asking if you always said no to his request for sex? I don't remember her questions. Would looking at a transcript help refresh your recollection? I don't know. Did you tell Detective Reyes that when you said no to sex with him, that he would then go away angry and you would spend the next 2 days being ignored? I don't know if I told Detective Reyes that. This question has already been asked of her. Did you tell Mueller that? I don't know. Is that a true statement? The way you're asking the question is very long and drawn out, and I'm trying to pay attention the best I can. I'm sorry. There were times he would ask for sex and you would say no, correct? He didn't ask. Is it your position he never asked for sex? I can't remember a specific time. You talked the other day about one particular incident when you had returned from Paris. Yes, sir. And you returned and Masterson wanted to have sex. Yes, sir. You said no to him. Yes, sir. You indicated that when you said no, Masterson had gotten angry. Yes, sir. And he had called you names. Yes, he did. And he ended up pulling your hair. He did not pull my hair. Did he drag you? Yes, sir. Despite you saying no, he had sex with you. He was initiating it. Yes. Did Okay, and this is gonna get a little intimate again. Did Masterson penetrate you in this incident? He was trying to have sex with me. My question is, did he penetrate you? I believe so. Did you tell Mueller about this incident, that you and Masterson did not have sex? It was stopped right away. My question is, did you tell Mueller you did not have sex during this incident? I don't know. Would it refresh your recollection to look at a transcript? I don't know. When you say that, are you saying the transcript is not accurate? It didn't help me the last time, so I'm answering honestly. I don't know. And the thing is that by saying, if she were to say that, yes, looking at the transcript would refresh my recollection, if she were to say that, that is a way of bringing up the transcript, having her read it so that she can read through it, and then they'll take it away from her. And then she says, like, okay, like now my memory's been refreshed. So this is one of the ways of bringing in written evidence that otherwise is hearsay and not admitting it as evidence, but just bringing it for the purposes of sort of supporting a certain type of testimony. But what she's saying here is, look, you had me look at it before and it didn't really help my recollection. So I don't know if it's going to be helping, if it's going to help my recollection on this particular issue either. And so basically that limits Cohen's ability to bring in the transcript another time for the purposes of refreshing her recollection like that. So, he can't bring it in if she says, like, I don't know if that would actually help me. Do you have a recollection of what you told Mr. Mueller? Objection, but allowed. I remember being scared. I remember answering his questions as honestly as possible. I remember being confused because I didn't know how interviews with DAs. I'd never spoken to a DA before. Given the fact that you'd never been through the process before, tell me why you don't think it would be helpful to look at a transcript as to why you actually told him, asked and answered. Has anyone told you? Yeah. So, I mean, because the thing is, she already said why she thinks that looking at a transcript wouldn't necessarily help her recollection. Because she said, "Look, I looked at it last time; it didn't help me, so I don't know that it would help me again." So yeah, he can't keep going back over that over and over and over again. Has anyone told you if the lawyer asks to look at a transcript, don't do it? Objection overruled. Ah, no. So his question then is getting to like, were you coached on this? Were you improperly coached by an attorney not to do this? And so there was an objection, but it was overruled because that's a proper question. And then she says no. In other words, no one ever told her like, hey, if you're in a situation where they try to refresh your recollection with a transcript like this, say you don't remember, say it wouldn't help or something like that. No one did anything like that. Are you part of the civil case against Masterson? Yes. Do you have a lawyer in that? Yes, sir. Is the lawyer in the courtroom? No, sir. Do you remember telling Mr. Mueller after a million times saying no, I'm tired, or no, I have an audition in the morning. Most of the time, I just ended up giving in. Yes, sir. Is that true? Yeah. Let's go through the chart list of interviews. When you spoke with your husband in 2010 or 2011, by the way, what's your husband's name? She says his full name. Mueller objects. Olmedo says strike it and just use Cedric B. You spoke with him in 2010 or 2011 regarding Masterson, correct? Correct. And you felt you could speak with him openly. Yes, sir. So and to go back up to the top of this page here where he goes over this quote of after a million times saying no, I'm tired, or no, I have an audition in the morning. Most of the time I just ended up giving in. That is getting to ultimately she would consent. That's what he's pointing at with that exchange. And then she says, yeah. But, whether the jury's going to look at that and say, like, is that really consent or is that not really consent? Like I said, jury is going to evaluate that on their own. Like whether they think that's coercive, or whether that's just like, she wasn't feeling it, but then she decided, and that is her decision to make. Okay. And you felt you could speak with him openly. This is talking about her husband. Yes, sir. And when you spoke to him, you were open with him? I opened up, yes. And he listened. Yes, sir. When you spoke with Cedric, you indicated that you told him about an occasion where you were asleep, you were out, and you woke up and your butt hurt, and Masterson spoke to you, and you told Cedric about that. I told him what he did, and I told him what he told me he did. What you told him about the December, I think this might be just a typo that's confusing me. Maybe it's, what did you tell him? Or did you tell him about the December 2001 incident? I did tell him about that. During this conversation, you also told him about the November 2001 incident that is the charge in this case. I told him about that and about other things. So you have no question you told him about the November 2001 incident? I have no question. He knows you're testifying. He's at home with our babies. He knows he has to testify. I just found out, yes. Do you know he was interviewed by Detective Vargas? He was on tour this past month. And apparently, yeah, so apparently he is a musician. Olmedo stopped there. Olmedo stopped you there. Did you know he was interviewed by Detective Vargas October 10th, 2022? Okay. So maybe that was by the judge sort of intervening here. And then she says, I gave Detective Vargas my private number. My question is, did you know he gave a statement to Detective Vargas October 10th, 2022? I didn't know that date. I know he was interviewed. While Cedric is on tour, the two of you are communicating by phone or FaceTime or some form of communication. With our children, yes. Did he tell you about being interviewed? Olmedo then interjects, this gets into hearsay. When you spoke to Cedric in 2011, did you also tell him about domestic violence in the relationship? I didn't get into many details. When you called the rape hotline, do you remember what you told the hotline? Do you specifically remember what you told them? I specifically remember what I asked. During your interview with Detective Reyes, if you called the hotline in October 2016, your interview with Detective Reyes would have been about 2 months later. Does that sound right? And then she questions that timing. But when you spoke to Reyes, your memory of what you told the rape hotline was fresh? It's still fresh in my mind. Did you say, I just want to know something? If you're in a relationship for 6 years and they have sex with you when you're unconscious, is that rape? Pretty sure. And the person said yes. She did say yes. And then Olmedo says we're going to take a 15-minute break. So that's the morning session here. I don't know if you guys are interested in me reading a bit more of this, but because we've then got let me show you this one, the lunch break report. Actually, but you know what? Instead of that, let's do another, oops, not this one. Nope, not that. Hang on. Trial day 12. Let's go through one more video here instead, but you guys can get another that's to give like a whole flavor of what this all looks like in detail. And Tony is doing a fantastic job of really going through this in a lot of detail and laying everything out in such a way that is so much more nuanced and specific than what we can get from any kind of reporting. So the more I talk about this case, the more I'm going to be going back to his stuff just to get all of these details. So, okay, let me go through this. And we'll see what happened on Friday, what he says about Friday. Okay. And then that'll probably be the end of it today. Okay, let's get into it.
Underground Bunker. It's Friday. It's only 3 o'clock. Judge Olmedo let us out early today for the weekend. But there was a considerable amount of stuff that happened today at the Danny Masterson trial, and I'm going to do my best to tell you about it. Yesterday, Detective Schlegel, while he was being questioned by Mueller, seemed to corroborate that many of the details that Jane Doe 1 is saying today, she also said in 2004 to him. Remember I told you about that yesterday. A lot of corroboration. And he also seemed to indicate that it was possible he might have checked Danny Masterson's gun registration without remembering it today. Well, today, and we also got another interesting detail today as that testimony continued. It turns out that Jane Doe 1 had at one time dated a police officer who was Schlegel's partner. And they didn't get into it too much, but what that suggests is that, why did she go into the Hollywood station at 10 o'clock at night? Well, now it seems to suggest that, in order to make sure she found someone at the desk that she could trust, this, a person who was working with the man she had dated. That just is sort of suggested, but it kind of helps fill in a detail. All right. So then it was Cohen's turn to cross-examine Schlegel. And it was funny to see if you know defense attorneys, it was fun. And I have a lot of respect. Let me tell you, I have a lot of respect for defense attorneys, okay? I've known a lot of great public defenders and other defense attorneys. I love the work they do. But it was funny to see a defense attorney asking Schlegel about his history and when did you get promoted? And only a few people get that promotion, right? It was so funny to see a defense attorney doing his best to make Schlegel look like he's the greatest detective who ever lived.
And the reason for that, of course, is because usually defense attorneys are trying to take down the credibility of any and all officers that are testifying in court, right? Because they're usually testifying against the defendant there. So that's the point that he's making here is that it's pretty funny that he's sort of like trying to like pump him up and make him look like this very glorious kind of officer. And the reason for that is because, like I said before, it sounds like the report that the defense doesn't like is Detective Reyes. So they want to sort of make her reporting, her investigation look like it was not properly done. And so making this other report, I guess, looking better in comparison is beneficial to the defense. Okay.
Why? Because Cohen wants to boost the idea that Schlegel's report is like perfect and that any discrepancies from what she's saying today is on her, not him. So then, the number one discrepancy, of course, being the gun. There's nothing about the gun in the report. And he asked him, if she mentioned a gun, you would have put it in the report? Yeah, sure, okay. So when it was Mueller's turn again.
So remember, that was, like I said, like he just said, the gun, whether there was a gun present in this encounter, right? Because that was Jane Doe 1 on like day 1 of testimony, said that he had pulled a gun on her to keep her silent in the middle of this act because there were other people. There was essentially a house party happening, and there was someone else outside the door, out in the hallway, and so he did that to keep her silent so that she wouldn't make any noise and invite someone to burst in to find out what's happening. But apparently in this one report with Detective Schlegel, apparently she didn't say anything about a gun. And so her reasoning for that, or her explanation for that, was this was me going out to the police. I wasn't supposed to. Scientology said that's not something that we do. I figured I was going to get excommunicated. I was going to be labeled as a suppressive person. And so she had a lot of fear about even going to the police in the first place. And so she left out that detail because she was too afraid to include that. And she also thought that she was kind of like helping to protect Scientology, I guess, was like another sort of secondary explanation there. So this is one discrepancy that they do kind of have to figure out where the chips fall on with regard to Jane Doe 1, because whether there was a gun, whether there wasn't a gun, is kind of a big detail to remember, right? So, this explanation of like how it ends up or doesn't end up in the report is interesting. So let's see, what kind of what happens on redirect. So Mueller is the one that called Detective Schlegel in the first place. And remember in the last video, he was saying, Tony was saying that like everything really basically lined up between the report and now what she's saying today. I guess there's just this one discrepancy about the gun, which again, like I said, she has her explanation that she's given as to why that was left out. And so on cross-examination, the defense attorney wants to make him look like he did the investigation properly. He would have asked about, any kind of a weapon. If she had said something about a weapon, he would have written it down. Therefore, because he didn't write it down, that means that she didn't say it. That means that, that there was nothing. There was no weapon involved in this incident. So let's see what happens on redirect when Mueller comes back to talk to Sergeant Schlegel after he's gone through cross-examination. It's kind of an interesting sort of twist on how this sort of works out.
Redirect. This time he went over some things that suggested Schlegel may not have done the best job. For example, Jane Doe 1 had given him a list of names for witnesses, like Bree Schaefer, Jenny Weinman. And there's nothing in the report about who they are or why they are related to the case at all. And it's kind of embarrassing the way, Mueller would ask him, well, did you look into why that person's even in this case? Oh, I'll check the report. Nope, nothing in here. he made Shagel look bad. So it was just a really odd situation where the district attorney's office is trying to make a policeman look like maybe he rushed the job. I mean, it was the middle of the night. That's the other thing they went through was he produced this report at like sometime between 10 at night and 4 in the morning.
So that's an interesting point here, right? To say that on redirect, then Mueller points to some other things that were left out of the report that were discussed in this interview with Jane Doe 1. So to say that she had listed a bunch of other witnesses, people to follow up with, and that not only were they left out of the report, no one bothered to follow up with them. That does appear to strike to a question about, whether this guy accurately put everything into the report that was supposed to be in there. So it also, it again calls into question this issue about the gun, about this whole thing. So it's an interesting point to bring up on redirect. And that's the proper place to bring it up, because you only want to take down, as a prosecutor, you only want to take down an officer if you absolutely have to, right? Because the defense has decided on cross-examination to go a particular route. So you save that for redirect, and that's, that's how they do it.
And then the defense is saying this is the greatest cop who ever lived. And then once the jury was out of the room, Cohen really kind of, he was worked up about it a little bit. And he was telling the judge, look, if they're going to question the competence of this police officer, I need to have, and they use coded language, legal language. Basically what it's saying was he deserves to get his personnel file.
Whoa.
I mean, if they're going to question the competence of this cop, they got to make sure that there's nothing in his history. And I love Judge Olmedo's,
which that doesn't seem like an effective argument to me.
To that. She said that sloppy report writing was something that they heard in court all the time and from both sides. So no, she wasn't going to go and, dig into the guy's file for the defense and all that. So that, look, I think both sides probably believe they got some good stuff out of Detective Schlegel. And I think both sides are justified in feeling that way. So then it was time for our star witness, rocker Cedric Bixler Zavala, who's in Mars Volta and at the drive-in. And he's somebody I have interviewed in the past on the record at the Underground Bunker. In particular, a story I wrote in 2018 about the death of their two dogs and how they believe Scientology was behind it. Cedric's married to Jane Doe 3. So although I respect that the court is calling him only Cedric B in the courtroom, he's not a sexual assault victim, and he's a very public person, and so that's why, and he's never asked me for anonymity. So that's why I'm referring to him by his full name. Go ahead, send me emails, tell me to delete the video. But no, it's Cedric.
Well, and the reason why the court gives him that designation is because if the court reveals his full name because he's married to one of the alleged victims, that then is revealing her full name, right? So in order to help protect her, they also have to do that with his name. So, it makes sense why the court wants to do that, but I also understand what he's saying about that he's actually talked to him and he's interviewed him and all that kind of stuff before. So that's like when the Associated Press writes these articles and they talk about, Gavin Newsom's wife in the Weinstein trial, that they're like, okay, this is the one alleged victim who has come out forward publicly, and so that's why we're naming her, but otherwise we have a policy of not naming these individuals, if they have not publicly come forward or in some way, giving us permission to use their name.
Anyway, it was pretty thrilling to see him in court. Let me tell you, it was a moment when Cohen on cross-examination said to him, I know this is going to sound like a silly question, but you love your wife, don't you? Classic defense attorney question. And Cedric said, like there's no tomorrow. Boom.
That's a bad question by the defense.
It just
That's a bad. I don't know why he asked that question, because you have to know that the question that the response that's going to come out of this witness is going to be very positive in his own, in his own defense, or his own, for positive for his wife. So like, why, why ask that? That's a dumb question by the defense, in my opinion.
changed the atmosphere in the court. I mean, wow. Especially after what we've heard about the other guy, right? So, on direct testimony, Mueller asked him if he believed that he and his wife were being harassed and stalked, and he said, yes, absolutely. Just like it was like, of course, On cross, Cohen's strategy was mainly about two things with Cedric. One, to question whether Jane Doe 3 had ever told him about the November 2001 incident, the alleged rape that is the charged incident in this case, before she went to the Austin PD. They were living in Austin, Texas in 2016 when she first went to the police for the first time. Cedric said he couldn't remember when she told him about it. The other thing Cohen tried to do was to suggest that he and his wife were colluding, right? And I just thought that was bizarre, because for the simple fact that Cedric said some things that didn't exactly line up with her version. I don't think that particularly hurts her, but if they were colluding, they're doing a pretty bad job of it.
And that is a very important point here. In these cases where there are allegations of collusion, whether we're talking about Masterson or whether we're talking about Marilyn Manson, Brian Warner, of course, as he's legally known. But like in these cases, I've talked about this before, how when you have multiple witnesses that are giving their accounts of things that they have encountered with a particular individual, having their testimony line up can be important, right? Because you have consistencies, do they corroborate one another? That's what we're looking for with different witnesses giving various accounts, on the same sort of event. But where you have a string of people that are testifying to either, slightly different accounts or different events, like we've got in the Manson case, where you've got these various women making these different claims. If they are overly connected, like they are making the same exact allegations or almost the same exact allegations, it can start to feel like those allegations are synthetic, right? That they are not authentic, they are not real, because they have come together and sort of decided to build and create a story for whatever reason, either because they don't like the person and they want to take them down, or because they see opportunity in a particular social movement, and so they figure this can help their career. There are so many different possible motivations in a case like that. But when there is a collusion allegation and you have these witnesses that they're trying to hint at these witnesses colluding, but there are some inconsistencies between them, that definitely undercuts that argument, right? Because if they are colluding, they're going to line up in these random weird ways. And, when under pressure, under cross-examination, like things might kind of feel weird about how things come out. But then they'll be like, they'll have like these little linchpins that kind of keep the chain together on the testimony, that just feels like, okay, that's oddly specific, like somebody has been coached here almost. So to the point that Tony's making here is, where there are some inconsistencies, that is also natural to have some inconsistencies, because like I said at the beginning of this live stream, and I've said many times on this channel, where we are talking about allegations that have spanned a long period of time, it is natural for the brain to fade, for the mind to fade, for the memory to fade, and for the for someone to maybe forget something, maybe reframe something, maybe recharacterize something. There are so many ways that can happen, and where the memory is traumatic, that likelihood is even higher. So, it is natural for there to be some inconsistencies, But what the jury is going to be looking for is whether the basic pieces line up, and whether even when confronted with those inconsistencies, that the witnesses are able to sort of like put, they're still able to present their stories for the jury in a way that still comes across as authentic and real. So if there are some slight inconsistencies here, and there are enough inconsistencies that it just seems weird that there would be this allegation of collusion, that undercuts the defense's argument. So what Tony is saying here is legitimate. Like, that logic is very sound, in my opinion.
I mean, it's pretty clear they didn't compare notes. I mean, because, he said a few things that just didn't agree with others. You can go through my notes and find it. I mean, to me, I was left with the idea that a guy who really loves his wife is just doing the best he can, telling the truth. And if his stories, if he has a slightly different version of what she told him 10 years ago, it's just how it is, So we finished up the day with another LAPD detective, Deborah Myers, and she was the one in 2004 who followed up on Schlegel's report a couple days after Jane Doe 1 went to the Hollywood Wilcox station. Once again, like with Schlegel, Mueller spent time showing that the narrative she took down was remarkably like what Jane Doe 1 is saying today. But then Cohen bored in on the differences, again, specifically about the gun. But for me,
which is what we expect, right? We expect the defense attorney to go in and hammer in on those differences, again and again and again, because that's essentially the theme for the defense, right? Is there are differences, there are inconsistencies in ways that matter in this case. That's what the defense wants the jury to walk away with and so they're going to hammer that at every possible opportunity. So whether that is through the testimony of Jane Doe 1 or the testimony of Detective Schlegel or through the testimony of Detective Myers, that is what they're going to be hammering in. So, so now they it seems like that's what they're doing here.
Most interesting thing was at the very end, Mueller was leading her through redirect, and he ran.
I'm back. Hang on. Sorry about that. Let me see here. I need to. Okay. My internet went out. So sorry, guys. 1 second here. All right. I've got to make sure that this is updated here. So sorry about that. It happens, though. This is what happens when we go live. Okay. All right. Resetting this right over here on my screen. Okay. And okay. Here we go.
Alleges she was attacked by Danny Masterson in April 2003. She went to the Church of Scientology, They put her through all this past life counseling, made her pay $15,000
It's a
for
lot
it,
of money.
made her made her feel like she was going to have to find out what she had done in past lives to be victimized in this life. She finally was like sick of it. She wanted to turn Danny in. She tried to get permission from the church. They told her, you can sue him, but don't go to the police. And finally, in June 6, 2004, she went to the police. She defied Scientology. She was terrified, and both the detectives agreed that she said she did not want her parents to find out. Can you imagine a woman in her 20s going to a police station to report a rape, and she doesn't want her parents to find out? Terrifying. Now, what we knew before this, I think Ishar Ali did some great reporting on this, and he had found that, Scientology, once they realized she had gone to the police, they just swamped the, investigation with affidavits from Scientologists calling her a liar. As far as we knew, that was basically what convinced the DA not to file charges. Well, today we got a different version of this. I mean, I think they did. I think
so. What he's saying about the affidavits is that apparently once they got word that she had gone to the police, they decided to send a bunch of people saying false things about her, possibly, to sort of try to convince the prosecution or to try to convince the DA not to pursue the case.
Scientology did that, and it probably contributed. But today we found out that Schlegel took a report, Myers took an interview. They had all this evidence from Jane Doe 1 about allegations from Danny Masterson. They're basically, for the large part, agreeing with what she's saying today. Terrible rape, treatment, choking, all that. And that the next step was to have an interview with a DA. Okay? But she was told by Myers that Myers has to be with her. So the LAPD detective has to go with Jane Doe 1 to talk to DA. And they set up a meeting for June 22nd, 2004. But right at that time, Jane Doe 1 was ill. She said she was contagious with something. She was on antibiotics. She's going to need a couple days. She said she would need 3 days. She could not go right then. But she asked permission, can she go on her own to talk to the DA? Because the detective had a vacation on schedule. And the detective couldn't change it.
Which, I will say, we do want to also respect the fact that the detective is also a human being. She probably also has needs for her own mental health, for her own vacation days. It could also have been a pre-scheduled thing for her family that was already prepaid. Like there are a lot of possibilities about this vacation. So we don't want to just automatically say like, oh, what a dirty cop, like she can't move her vacation for somebody who has been raped, or allegedly raped, when realistically, these are probably the kind of cases that this detective deals with all the time. And so if she's going to be making exceptions from her own personal life for a case like this, in this instance, is there also an expectation that she does it for every single case, and that therefore she as a police officer or as a detective does not have any right to her own personal life? Like how can that impact her own mental health? Like there's a lot that can be said about that. But I do understand his point that it does sound very cheap in comparison to what Jane Doe 1 says she went through.
And so guess what? The DA insisted that a call one way or the other be done by June 24th. There was no time to reschedule. Case over.
That's something that I don't quite understand. Is I can understand the detective saying, "No, I have I have a vacation. I need it. My family needs it. Like this is something that I've been looking for. I cannot reschedule this." I can understand that. I don't understand the DA saying, like, having this seemingly arbitrary deadline. I don't know. I mean, of course, he's not giving any details about why the DA said that she needed that June 24th deadline, right? It would be helpful to know to determine whether or not we should be judging this DA down to hell in a handbasket, right? But it does sound like this is a case that didn't move forward because a DA made an arbitrary deadline and just like for no reason. So that is something that sounds awful.
Because the DA's office and the detective wouldn't reschedule for an ill rape victim. Oh, I mean, the implications are just hitting me now. I mean, I thought about it somewhat upstairs, but now that I'm thinking about it, it's disgusting. So maybe Danny Masterson might have faced charges 18 years ago, but a detective and a DA couldn't change their schedules because they got a vacation schedule. Wow. I mean, maybe if that had resulted in charges and it had been publicized, Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 2 and Jane Doe 3 would have found each other a long time ago.
I understand his
So
anger.
that was a bit of a bombshell there at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But we're done for today, and we got a 4-day weekend, people. I got some good stuff for the weekend, though. Keep checking your email.
Okay. So that's the end of his video there. So yeah, so that's basically it for that case right now, because like he said, there's a 4-day weekend. So Monday, Tuesday, no jury trial in the Masterson case. So today there's no developments, but there will be tomorrow. They will be back in court. And the more I go through Tony Ortega stuff, the more I really appreciate the fact that he is in the courtroom every single day, and just getting all of that information out there for Substack. So the link to his Substack is pinned in the chat here. So, and I will also put it in the description below for the people on replay. So if you guys are interested in seeing his detailed stuff, you don't have to pay for his Substack to get this information from him. The transcript basically that we read through earlier, it's not on the paid version. But if you are interested and you are following this case and you really appreciate his stuff, of course you are more than welcome to support him through Substack as well. So because obviously he's doing some really, really great work here. Anyway, that for me about does it. So far, like I said, with Weinstein, it's a lot harder to determine how these witnesses are coming across, because we don't see anyone talking about their evaluation of these various witnesses. It's even like harder to get, to get reporting on like the cross-examination of these various witnesses. But like I said, I am biased. I have a feeling that he is probably going to be convicted of this as well. The testimony that has come out so far is just so heinous and so gruesome, I could say, in a sick, maybe is maybe a better word for it. But there's a lot there that has been coming out. And of course, both of these cases are in the prosecution's case in chief, right? So generally speaking, when you get to the halfway point, when the defense takes over for their case in chief, you need to be feeling like, okay, the prosecution or the plaintiff, depending on if we're in a criminal case or a civil case, you need to like feel convinced by that side, right? Because they have already put everything out there. So if you feel like, all right, I'm with these people, that means that they have done their job right. Then there's obviously the other side to it, that they have the opportunity to put their evidence forward, their witnesses forward, and give their perspective and their side of the case, aside from, their opportunities during cross-examination. So, but in this case in Masterson, the more I'm seeing, the more it looks like there is consistency on the side of the prosecution, which is good for the prosecution, bad for the defense. They are trying to poke holes in what these alleged victims have testified to about their experiences with Danny Masterson. And that's it's so far, they have scored some points. I will say that. But I don't know that those points are going to be enough to create reasonable doubt, which is what has to happen in both of these cases, in Weinstein and Masterson. They're criminal cases, so the prosecution has to prove beyond reasonable doubt that these guys did the things that they are accused of doing. So which is a much, much, much higher standard than any civil case. So we'll see. We'll see as this continues to progress. But I think both of these guys, I'm starting to lean towards them possibly being convicted, both of them. We'll see. We'll see. My mind is still open at least to a certain extent on the Weinstein case, but on Masterson, my mind is still open on what kind of evidence can come in this case. There's still a lot of time in both of these cases to see what comes out, but that for me, that should about do it. And as I like to say at the end of these live streams where we're talking about these very heavy cases, very difficult cases, we're going through some testimony that is just dark at times, right? Some things that have been alleged that are just incredibly heinous. My reminder to you guys is if you feel like you have lost some sense of control of like, what goes on in this world, you feel like things are just getting too dark. Number one, talk to someone you love. Number two, maybe do something to sort of try to, in one small step, try to create a rebalance in this universe, right? Do something good for somebody else that can't repay it. Do something that is going to benefit someone else that doesn't benefit you at all. Do one good thing today to sort of, like I said, sort of reshift a small balance in this universe again towards good and towards light. Maybe pick up the phone and call someone that you haven't talked to in a while and tell them that you're thinking about them and you care for them and you love them, if that's appropriate. So all of those things are good things to do and might be things that we often forget in our busy lives. But one last super chat for today. Piers Taylors, thanks so much for your super chat. I hope you enjoyed this live stream, and yeah, I appreciate it very much. So, okay, with that, for me, that about does it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video.